Here is, if you had obtained a secret weapon that you knew would brutally devastate your enemy, would you use it? Now, I want you guys just to think about that question. Of course, there's the other thoughts of what is this weapon? What kind of brutality? We talking like it's going to torture them or it's going to kill them in an instant, like the atomic bomb killed people in an instant, or is it going to torture them like gas? Poisonous gas. So the question is, with all of that aside, you knew this would help you win the war, at least thought it would. Would you use this weapon? So here, you guys can see this. We're looking at the Marne. We're going to kind of see some different kind of ideas and things that are happening here. So we have a video. We'll just go ahead and get this going right now. Then we'll jump back.
Right, here's the next. First World War update, 100 years to the day it happened. This time the Battle of Marne, one of the great battles of the 20th century. On the 5th of September, the British Army had reached a town 10 miles from Paris called Clay. It was one of the longest retreats in the British history, about 150 miles in 2 weeks. The British fought rearguard actions and then would resume their retreat. The men were exhausted. The commander, Sir John French, was nothing about World War I. The British Army went to Belgium to fight the Germans under an Irishman called French. Anyway, the commander, French, seemed to have a collapse in confidence. He wanted to pull out the British forces completely and rebuild them. But he wouldn't have the chance because the crisis of the German invasion in the West had arrived. The Germans were confident they were winning. They thought they had to simply follow the British and French as they retreated, and victory would be theirs. They abandoned their plan to encircle Paris, and instead they headed south after the retreating Allies. On this map, the Germans are green, the French are purple, and the British are an affecting pink. Now this was a vital turning point. The Germans didn't realise by doing this they'd be exposing their right flank to this French sick army. The French commander, General Joffre, saw the opportunity and he ordered his exhausted men to one last attack. They crashed into the German flank. The French were desperate for British support. The British Minister of War, Lord Kitchener, had to go out to France and give the British Commander-in-Chief a direct order to attack and not retreat any further. Anyway, the German First Army dealt successfully fairly with this French attack. In doing so, it moved its troops to face the new threat, opening up a gap between them and the neighbouring Second Army next door. Into this gap marched the British Army, albeit fairly slowly. Now, on a battlefield, the enemy in your flanks or your rear is one of the most dire threats. So it's now the turn of some of the German commanders to suffer a major collapse in confidence. Communications had broken down, there was now a big gap in their front line. One German general had a nervous breakdown, for example, he was up all night crying. As Titanic fighting was raging up and down the front line, appalling casualties resulting, and on the 9th of September, at 9:02 in the morning, the German army received orders to retreat. Now this was a turning point, a decisive moment of the First World War. Germany's plan to capture Paris quickly and win the war in the West in weeks had failed. It would not be a short war, and there would be a lot of fighting to come. You can follow it here by subscribing to this channel.
You guys can see that. So we have the Battle of the Marne. So this is where this happens. It's the first time they used radio intercepts in automotive transportation of troops in wartime. Before, they had only used, at best, horses marching, or, of course, the best would be railroad. But railroads have to be installed and put there, whereas automobiles can kind of, use roads that aren't, could be built the day before, week before, whatever that would be. So the other thing, though, is French Joffre orders an offensive. So you get the French Sixth Army opens a gap between the first and second. As mentioned before, they exploit the gap with the Fifth Army, the British there. And then Foch's Ninth Army thwarts the advancing Germans' second and third armies. This was seen as an opportunity to reverse German advance. Of course, this was through Belgium and France. But it was all alerted by the French air recon. So this is where planes come in. Now, planes, of course, were not what we see today. You don't have a F-18 or some sort of bomber, a B-29 or something like that. You would have, in World War II or current with the F-18. But we do see different things. Now, the other thing to note here is that taxis, yes, we're talking about real life taxis, helped get people, as well as buses, to the front. So they used the Parisian or Paris people's taxis and buses to move up. And then German, of course, were surprised because they had recalls, advance guards, swung forces southwest to meet attack losses, and they touched with the Second Army on the left flank. When the British surge forward, the Second and Third Armies are frustrated, and of course, they continue to repel. So we have kind of this thing where the Germans weren't used to this happening. They had been winning and just kind of doing whatever they wanted to a certain degree. And because they're repealed continuously, this gets frustrating, as well as just being frustrated in general. So September 10th, the Germans ordered to regroup in different front. The 13th, the French attacks fail to dislodge Germans' positions. Which is, of course, the north side of Asia. Each of the side begin flank maneuvers known as a race to the sea. Now, the reason that they have this thing, the race to the sea, what that means is they want to outflank the other group. So they might go 2 miles and then try to come in. Well, the other group realizes this, so they go 3 or 4 miles. Well, this whole race is whoever can get to the sea first can use that as their back and start flanking from that side. So the victory here would be Germans outrun logistics and heavy artillery. Now, when they outrun their logistics, they can't get supplies that they need. So when you run out of ammunition, you can't just say, hey, I need some more ammunition. It's, we might wait a couple days. Now, the German commanders lose control of army commanders. So you have the top echelon, because he's not able to speak with them as quick. He can't really control what they're doing, so they're doing what they think is best and is not a part of his plan. And Joffrey takes advantage of this overexertion and starts things on the second battle, July 15th, 1918. You can see here that's bottom right is kind of a battle to the sea. Also crossing would be the same thing of no man's land. But this is a very quick little berm that they used to, well, be protected, because if only your head's showing, then they can only shoot your head, whereas they have a lot more vitals protected there. Again, here's a taxi. That's what they would have used in the battle to get people up there. And of course, we have people marching, trying to get as quick as they can to the front or to the side. Now we're going to the Battle of Ypres, and there's 3 actual battles that make this up. So they want position north coast of Belgium. And the first battle is October 19th, 1914. So the Germans have the first phase offensive. Their idea is here, we're going to break Allied lines, capture Ypres and other channel ports, and control the North Sea. And if they do that, then they have supply chains and that kind of stuff going there. So the Allied resists along. They also go on attack when they see an opportunity. We'll see that with the later battles that make up the Battle of Ypres. Fighting continues until November 22nd, and both sides have tons of losses, and they have winter, of course, is going to halt that, which it traditionally has, because winter, people get sick, people get cold. You can't sit out inside the cold too long. If you don't have the right clothes, you need to get new clothes for people. I mean, it's just a cluster, So we get the second battle, which is April 22nd, 1915. The German forces shock Allied troops. They fire more than 150 tons of chlorine gas. Now, chlorine is a gas, and in order to get the measurement, you have to have, well, we're using weight here. So when they use the weight, again, gas is going to be much lighter than a lot of other things. So they have 150 tons of it, which is a lot. The other thing you got to look at here is 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. This is about 300,000 pounds of chlorine gas. And they use it against the 2nd French Colonial Division. This is like the first time, or one of the first times it's used. So, of course, gas masks need to be invented and brought in to where everybody can have those. It's actually a terrible thing. It gets into your lungs and can suffocate you and that kind of stuff. So they began with usual artillery bombardment. Shelling died, and Allied troops wait for the first arrival. And then there's a panic because they use that chlorine gas. And so Germans fail to take the advantage and kind of charge in. Allies hold position and shocked how well it works. well, of course, chlorine gas. It's crazy. It's disgusting. It's actually it's illegal to use in war today. It's considered well, a atrocity and that kind of thing. So it ends May 25th with no significant gains for the Germans other than killing some people. But again, we're going by land as significant gains. So the third battle is July 31st, 1917. Allied renews assaults on German lines, and then this lasts for 3 months. It's spearheaded by the commander from British area Haig, and insisted that British should press ahead with another major offensive that summer. No, he wanted to be meticulously planned, but also aggressive. But the idea was that if the German army was on the verge of collapse and you do this, the morale goes through, they collapse, and you win. Again, we're talking about 1917. Unfortunately, the war is not going to end for a couple years. It's also thought to be completely broken by Allied victory. Again, if they destroy them, they're going to be destroyed, whereas they're not going to retreat. You also have the opening barrage of 3,000 guns, which is, again, insane, the amount of firepower. It was every battle after this just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. First 2 days of the attack, they suffer heavy casualties. They take more than 5,000 prisoners. And then you also have like offenses renewed in August. You end up with heavy rains. And during this time, you don't have planes. You don't have certain things that can get through the mud. So if you can't march and you can't charge, like, of course, that's going to prevent things. So honestly, the best thing to save people's lives was the rain and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it made miserable for staying in these trenches. So Haig is replaced as the commander, and he is the head of attack. They're dissatisfied with his attack, mainly because it didn't accomplish everything he promised. So enters the third month. People are exhausted. There's only a few notable gains. German reinforced position. Haig unwilling to give up, of course, and then orders final 3 attacks in October and eventually captures Passchendaele. And Haig finally calls off the offensive, claims victory. But again, they had 310,000 casualties, and 260,000 casualties were German. This didn't really do much except for take people out and make things a lot worse for those who lived. Costly and controversial. It was also wasteful to all sorts of different things. And it also shows the nature of how futile trench warfare was and is. You guys can see here we have during the winter and just trying to make kind of things work through. Here is gas. So what they would do is they'd fire these things, and then you just prayed that the wind was blowing away from your trench, because if you fired that and it blew back towards you, oh man, that was coming right at you, which is not good, because that stuff was horrific. Now, here's the other thing I want you to look at. This picture right here, you can see this guy trying to slightly look over. This is what a lot of people think trenches looked like, and these were some of the nicer trenches. But you can see we got some people sleeping. There's also, in this, you would see dead bodies and other things if they didn't have time to get through. And so it just became this crazy, disgusting area. And if it was wet, this would be full of water. Just a miserable, miserable, miserable place to be. So trench warfare was awful. If that's one thing you can get from this, it was like the epitome of the worst thing that you've ever gone through times about 100,000, especially if you're in one of these battles where they fire for 5 or 6 or 7 days. Just, you can't sleep because they fire so many of these shells and get you shell shock.